What is up? Happy belated Valentine's Day or Singles Awareness Day if it fits you. Jeff Sharon here, along with Eric Lopez, Kyle Nash, and Nick Porcelli for Night Shift. We got a busy one for you. I had your softball preview last week, which we got done. Boys, thank you so much for that. And this week starts baseball, so we got lots to talk about there. We'll talk about basketball as well on the men's and women's side. We've also got some a little bit of football news and some media news to talk about in this show, gentlemen. I feel like it's been a while since we've all hung out together. Has it been? I mean,
speak for yourself. Me and Nick are inseparable.
Yeah, you guys are all over the place with softball and
entirely the blame on this one. Listen, Nick has come up huge covering men's basketball. Bryson has stepped in nicely on the women's side. But I will be more available starting this weekend. I'll be in the house to cover at Addition Financial Arena for men's basketball. So there you go.
Kyle, you didn't make your way out to Vegas, did you, for the Super Bowl?
I did not. Listen, personal issues prevented that. But I'll say this. For all the well-wishings that this staff gave me as a 49ers fan, I appreciate it. I don't need it. I can make a strong argument that this is the best Super Bowl of all time when I expected 31-17 Chiefs, if you listen to the Student of the Game podcast.
It was arguably, I'd say, top three most dramatic.
That's what I mean. Yeah, right. If you don't have this
greatest endings,
most compelling Super Bowls, quote, you don't know ball. So.
If only your head coach knew the overtime rules, maybe you would have won.
I don't buy that one. I don't buy that one.
The fact he didn't know the rules?
No, I don't think that's true. I think he misspoke in the press conference.
His players said as much. They didn't know the rules.
No,
that's on him.
For the players, it's not really their job to know. It's the coach's job to know.
You stop on defense.
That's the Chiefs knew.
I know you and your. No, they didn't.
Yeah,
no, they didn't.
Chiefs, NFL film. Go to NFL films. The Chiefs celebrated when the Niners agreed to take the ball in overtime because they wanted the ball. No, they're not. They were smart. They won the Super Bowl.
So let me tell you, my friends don't lend friends.
This is a UCF podcast, right?
Okay.
We're just getting this out there because Kyle has something to say. Hold on. I want to hear what Kyle's got to say about this. Go ahead, Kyle.
I'm enjoying this.
ESPN, like our good friend, the Sultan of Stickball here. Okay. Here's why Kyle Shanahan was correct. And by the way,
really,
this isn't just
you're going to defend that nonsense of Kyle Shanahan.
Let him say
it. Is the Dolphin fan who had a great
view from
the past 3 weeks. And by the way, apparently the cold infected your brain too 3 weeks later. The punchline's this, okay? The reason why I don't have a problem with it is two reasons, okay? First of all,
oh God,
if you're going to see that Patrick LeVon Mahomes II, had 3 straight scoring drives, what is the best thing for any team to do? Keep him on the sideline. Let him get cold. 2, what's the better scenario, Eric Lopez? Give Brock Purdy the opportunity to dictate the tone, or put him in a position where Patrick LeVon Mahomes II hands him, you have to go not only score a touchdown, but convert a 2-point conversion. Because the Chiefs post-game are on record saying they would have gone for 2 had they scored the touchdown.
Correct.
Right. But okay, here's where I will also defend Shanahan. All right.
He's only choked
49ers. The 49ers, Shanahan did not know that the Chiefs would do that. Okay. So I think you have to assume the safest idea is if I take the ball, let's play this out. If I take the ball first and I score a touchdown, I'm putting the pressure on them. Then the worst case scenario is they score a touchdown. Then what happens? I have the ball in sudden death.
Except it didn't happen because you guys couldn't score a touchdown.
Well, of course it didn't happen, Eric.
He doesn't.
But it may have.
No, it wasn't going to happen.
If I wanted
2020 over here is,
this is the same coach. This is the same guy that blew a 28-3 Super Bowl. That blew the Super Bowl. He's a choker. Heimlich.
Do better.
Done. You will never win with him.
Kyle, I forgot that Kyle
We're done.
Shanahan was the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons when they lost to the Patriots.
Correct, he was. He was the offensive
I thought he was
coordinator
the
that kept throwing the ball.
Wait. Was he the guy? Wait, was it his defense that blew a 25-point lead in a quarter?
No, it was the offense that kept turning the ball over when they should have been running the ball.
They only had one turnover, by the way. But anyway.
Let's keep making. Look, you guys will make excuses for him, like because he's Mike Shanahan's little kid. Meanwhile, he blames Steve Wilkes by firing him.
I don't. But I will say,
Okay.
I will say this, Eric. You have an unusual, and this is how I'll bring it back to UCF, is that you have an unusual tendency for screaming at people. Why didn't they choose rock instead of paper and playing rock, paper, scissors?
No. This was common sense. Know the rules of overtime. You want the ball second because you dictate what happens. You're going to know what you need.
No, you dictate what happens if you have the ball first.
No, you don't. Not in the overtime rule when both teams are guaranteed the ball. When you get the ball second.
What happened? Literally dictating means saying the first thing.
The problem is he was thinking, we'll have a third possession. There was never going to be a third possession because the team that was going to have. No, because the Chiefs were going to go for two as they smartly.
You didn't know that.
They were going to dictate it. They said it! You guys listen. Do you not watch post-game shows? Please watch the post-game.
Eric, they didn't say they were going for two before the game. You didn't know that.
The Chiefs said so in the postgame. They were mic'd up.
The Niners
during the game.
Know that, Eric.
Because they're idiots and they were out-coached.
No.
Idiots. Stop reading the advanced metrics maybe once in a while and figure out how the game's going.
I'm not reading advanced metrics.
I'm talking to Kyle Shanahan. Kyle Shanahan is a failure.
Eric, how much money did you have on the Niners? Just tell us.
Yeah,
I didn't care.
I'll get in this conversation here. If Patrick Mahomes II gets stopped on 4th and 1, we're not having this conversation.
But you did you?
Lopez is talking about how badly Andy Reid screwed up, okay?
Let me ask you this, Kyle. Let me ask you. Okay, hold on, Kyle. Hold on. How confident were you really that the Niners were going to stop Patrick Mahomes in that drive? Seriously.
On the drive? No one.
Yeah.
Listen, at no point in that game was anybody confident. And that's the proof of how good a Super Bowl it was, dude.
I agree. That's why you have to do not let Patrick Mahomes decide the game. You decide the game.
Oh, then you bring him on the field to dictate the tone. Come on, Eric, do better.
Go with the ball second. You let Mahomes score his touchdown. You still get the ball.
Time period for me. I'm loving this.
Kyle. Here's the thing. Eric knows we have him, and so he's just going to kind of double and triple.
There it is. I will.
For the first time ever in 300 episodes.
Listen.
There's 300 plus episodes. We've gotten Eric to drop an F-bomb.
Hey. Yes. Jeff can go to Threads with his five people that are on Threads while I'm watching the postgame show on the NFL. Listen to the NFL postgame show. They do have those on NFL Network. But anyway.
That doesn't make them right, buddy.
Doesn't make them right. No,
hey, if you're happy with being in second place, good for you. I'm happy for you.
Hindsight is 2020. You know it's not hindsight though. Well, it is a little bit of hindsight. Hindsight 2020. Let's 8 minutes into the show talk about men's basketball.
I was gonna ask, how much of this are we keeping in the show? Honestly,
I know. Well, clearly not 100% of it. Yeah. So men's basketball right now, let's check in with them. 13-10, 4-7 in the conference, and coming off of what I thought was kind of a heartbreaker. After the loss of Texas Tech, where it felt like they had a shot once again. This team is in games late, and it's just like, man, they just can't. Sometimes they just can't catch a break, especially on the road. They lose to BYU 90-88 in a game, Eric Lopez, where they scored 63 points in the second half. 62 points in the second half. But the key number here, and listen, folks, this is what I do with Eric. I throw him up in the air and he hits them. Eric Lopez. Let's look at the free throw numbers, shall we?
Oh God.
UCF in this game shot 26 free throws, made 14 of them. Not ideal. However, BYU shot 46 free throws in this game, made 40 of them, but for a 46-26 advantage in free throw attempts throwing aside the percentages, Eric, have you ever seen a team try 46 free throws in a game for or against UCF? I've never seen a number that high. I thought it was a typo.
I mean, you got to go back to the Michael Jordan era when Jordan used to get 40 free throws with the Bulls. I thought Dick Bavetta was officiating in Provo, Utah. Yeah, that was an absolute disgraceful officiated game. Embarrassment. And it's a reason why people don't watch college basketball as much as they used to. That was an embarrassment. An embarrassment and the Big 12, which is an incredible league. It's an incredible league, and it's got officiating. Did you realize, I did not know this, the Big 12 prior to this year did not have somebody in charge of officials to review how they did as far as their performance?
They didn't have a director of officiating?
No, they just decided this year because Bob Bowlesby was an idiot. It blows my mind away. And college basketball, Jay Bill, it's been discussed. I remember Kyle was about ready to storm the court in the Houston game last year with the officiating.
Yeah.
It hasn't gotten better, Kyle, unfortunately. And the Big 12 loves the home court advantage. And that's what it was. And I'm,
Well, the foul numbers
for
the game was 27. UCF committed 20, or I should say, was called for 27 fouls. BYU was called for 19. But let's be real here. Like BYU, the way they play offense, I actually saw an interesting thing on YouTube. I think I'll share it probably in the show notes. When you're playing them, they're one of only 5 teams within a certain period of time, I forget it, who have attempted more 3-pointers than 2-pointers in the course of a season. They actually shoot like more than 50% of their shot attempts have been from 3-point range. They play like a video game offense. And for UCF to run with them on the road within 2 points, it's just like,
Well, I mean, the game wasn't as close as a 2-pointer. UCF made a run at the end to make it close. I mean, if you watch the
game, but isn't that the point when you're playing this kind of competition? Get it close in the end. Right?
I'll say this about that. What is it they always say is live by the 3 and die by the 3. I mean, if you look at BYU hitting from 3-point land, they're only 34%, which is average at best. Yeah. I think you're right with the lead of the free throws being the issue here.
Oh. Yeah, well, and BYU, to their credit, they made an adjustment. They attacked the basket more because they knew UCF was playing up close to the 3. So they went more towards the basket, obviously got rewarded.
I mean, you say that, Elo, but also as a perimeter team, they got Darius Johnson fouled out. That matters. They got Shamari Allen in foul trouble with 4.
Right.
So, I think that was certainly a factor in the game. They just weren't connecting on the threes as much as they would have liked.
Yeah.
For sure.
So now it sets up this kind of situation here because we got to look at the schedule ahead. UCF has Cincinnati at home on Saturday, 4 p.m. Then out to Morgantown Tuesday, back home for Texas Tech, at Oklahoma State, home for Iowa State, who's 10th in the country now all of a sudden, home for Houston at TCU to finish it out. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games to go. They're at 13 and 10. All right. Elo, I'll start with you, and then I want to go to Nick over here to take a look at this. Like, what do they have to do to get to not the NCAA tournament, to get to the postseason now in order to finish this out in these last 7, plus ostensibly a tournament game?
Well, the NIT is tricky because remember, there's no more automatic bids with the mid-major. So I think actually, if a lot will depend on how many teams the Big 12 gets. Let's say they get 9. If UCF is the best team or the second best team from the Big 12 that doesn't get in and they're above 500, they're probably going to get a bid. I would say
how many has he got?
He's got 9, I believe. So I think 9? if you get to 6 or 7 conference wins, that's probably going to get you an NIT bid. 8 might even get you a high seed. But I think this is an important game to kind of stop the bleeding, if you will. Whatever it is, we could complain about the officiating. I mean, that could go back to Lubbock. I mean, the officiating wasn't any much better there, but that's road. That's welcome to the road. All you ask for is that you get the benefit of the doubt at home. But now you've lost 2 in a row. You host Cincinnati, who's kind of had your number recently. You got to win this game because then you go to West Virginia. And I know on paper you're going to, West Virginia's not very good, but you're going to Morgantown. That is not an easy place to play. Just ask Kansas. They lost there too. So this thing could kind of snowball. And so let's not just assume that we're guaranteed to win games down the stretch. So I think this is an important home game to kind of stop that bleeding because Iowa State's playing at a high level. Texas Tech's very good. So it's not like there's gimmies coming up. So I really do think this is a very important game as far as postseason's concerned. I'm not even discussing the NCAA. I know some people are trying to float that. I'm not in that camp because I think they got to make a big run for that. I think it's more about the NIT. But even so, I think to just keep this positive momentum, and I'm going to be curious, will the fans still come out like they have to this point?
Well, they're going to need him for this one. Ken Pom has this one pretty tight, a 50-50 game right now. Cincinnati's won, they've lost 2 in a row and 5 of their last 7. Their only wins in that stretch against UCF by 11 at home. And then against Texas Tech in Lubbock, by the way, they won by 3. Lost to Houston by 5. Lost to Iowa State by 9. I'm still amazed at how this entire conference dances on the head of a pin. It's remarkable to me how everybody here. So Nick, I want to get you over on this here too because I'm looking at bracketology. Cincinnati, by the way, is in one of the first 4 out, according to Joe Lunardi. So they're on the outside looking in. But aside from that, what do you think that on court UCF has to do to overturn what happened in the previous game against Cincinnati and get back on the winning track here?
One thing they're going to have to do is something I feel like I always have to talk about, make their free throws. Please just hit them. And then I don't know if you guys will agree with this, but I feel like in the recent games, they've been getting in a lot of foul trouble. Like a lot of guys have been fouling out or pretty close. They got to avoid doing that. We can complain about the officials all we want, but they got to try to avoid that, especially when it's some of their better players in Darius Johnson and Ibrahim Diallo.
Yeah, UCF right now shooting 70% from the line as a team. I think that the scouting report right now is out that all right, the first thing you got to do is you got to get the bigs in foul trouble, Diallo and then Payne, and make UCF play small. Now, there's a couple different ways they could do that, but there's also a couple factors that are kind of out of your control. Like how do they actually officiate this game? One number I thought was pretty interesting. You see coming into I don't know if this held up in the BYU game, but coming into the BYU game, Eric and Kyle and Nick, UCF was 6th in the country in percentage of opponents' shot attempts that they blocked.
I mean, welcome to life with the block party hosted by Ibrahim Diallo, folks.
I mean, this is not, we can say this now. This is one of the best rim protecting teams in the country by far.
But you fire Johnny though, Jeff. Just saying.
But that's where it comes down to. Like you got to, opponents are going to try and get those guys in foul trouble.
Yeah.
So
I mean, we've seen it. Both when Diallo's fouled out, and then that one he missed due to the injury. How much worse the defense looked without him.
But again, I mean, the first Cincinnati game, he fouled out in 5 minutes. I mean, you could say, well, it's easy to say, well, you just gotta you just gotta not foul. Well, that's easy. This team has to play aggressive, otherwise they're not going to be effective defensively. So unfortunately, the whistle tones. Now, I will say this: the BYU game, they didn't finish the first half very well. That cost them. You go back to the first meeting with Cincinnati, they kind of faded down the stretch in that game when they were up double digits. They were without 2 guys, starters, obviously, in Walker and Allen in that ball game. Texas Tech, they had a chance there. They didn't finish there. They got to be able to make plays down the stretch. I mean, Nick, you remember we were there for the BYU home game. There was an opportunity there. They didn't close.
Right.
That could come down big in this ball game with Cincinnati is who's going to be making the right plays in crunch time if it's a tight game.
I mean, really, it sounds simple, but the thing I just want to see the most is them play 2 full halves. How many times do we see literally just?
Wasn't that what Jalen told you at the media availability that he felt they haven't played a full game basically from that standpoint?
Which one? Like, that was literally one of the questions. It feels like a broken record, doesn't it? You keep saying that we got to play full halves. That's been their biggest problem. They either go down a lot or they'll, have a really good first half, and then suddenly they'll fall off in the second half, and the other team comes back. They just
and it especially happens on the road, right, Nick? Like,
that's
how many road games?
1 or 2 wins, right?
Yeah, well, how many road games have they had, especially in conference, where they fell down like double digits almost out of the gate?
Yeah,
and then and to their credit, fought back. But it would be nice to give yourself a little bit of a head start because they've gotten some good starts at home.
Yeah,
in several games, even the ones that they lost against BYU, we got off to a good start. The Baylor game, they got off to a good start, but just couldn't close out. Well, I mean, here's the deal: 4 of the last 7 at home. Cincinnati on Saturday. It's going to be a big one. I think this is going to be a tight game. This could be a real.
Game's on your shoulders, Kyle. It's on your shoulders, Kyle.
You know what? I appreciate you guys putting it on me, but the part that I get really positive about when it comes to this squad is I'm looking at teams, specifically a number 25 ranked Oklahoma, that's 500 in the conference. If nothing else is more uplifting for UCF, it is in fact that all they got to do is do 500 or better. I know they have 7 games left, but if they do better than 500 and finish out 4-3, they could put themselves in a position to where they can have 8 conference wins. And in this silly conference, I say silly, meaning as far as you can do great and have a low conference record because it's so bleeding good. What is it? They have 3 quad 1 wins, Eric? Something crazy like that?
Sure, you're right.
Not being stuck in the American, which I was told was supposed to be the next best thing, allegedly, right? This whole thing, not by you, of course. I'm not trying to throw you under the bus, Lopez. But the punchline is this, guys. Any rumors of UCS death by all the Fire Dawkins crew is dramatically overstated. And you know what? I need any sort of NIT memorabilia. If you're going to buy it for me, I'll gladly take it. As a football school in the first year in the best basketball conference in America.
I mean, we said that at the start of the year, right? Like, just getting to a postseason, regardless of what it is a success for year 1 of the Big 12. So, yeah.
No doubt about it. By the way, 2 teams tied at the top of the Big 12 right now. Houston and Iowa State. What are their conference records?
I think
8-3.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think they have 8 wins.
8-3.
No, the league beats them. Yeah, the league beats each other up. They're going to play on Monday night, Houston. That got bumped to Big Monday on ESPN. So,
I would do.
Yeah,
that
we'll
too.
see. Protect the home court. I mean, that's going to be what they got to do. And you made a good point, Kyle and Nick. John Darius has to be more efficient. At times, he gets kind of not efficient, and that kind of disrupts the offense a little bit. Yeah, and I think that's a fair point. And I think they have to get production out of the backcourt, and then you need a guy like Avery or Antoine Jones to be your third scorer, perhaps. Jones didn't score, I believe, in the second half of the BYU game. So we'll see what happens. It's a big game for both teams. Cincinnati's on the bubble, obviously. A loss there to UCF might derail Cincinnati out of the bubble completely. So it's a big game. Kyle, get to see old buddy Jameel Reynolds on the other team.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by that. Listen, I've always been fond of
Jameel Reynolds remaining in the same conference as UCF, it turns out.
Ain't that funny, though? I mean, by the way, inevitably, I'll ask a question, of course, of Coach Dawkins of that. But, I mean, listen, guys, this is going to be a fun one, I feel like. And listen, if nothing else is more motivating to a team than taking a rival team out of the bubble, I think the intangible side UCF here. They're at home. They have that opportunity to strike the Bearcats as such. That they got that working for them, man.
A little familiarity breeds content.
I think it's also you already lost once. You can't lose again.
I think the other part is they look back at that first Cincinnati game up there and they're like, "Hey, man, we were shorthanded. We got the full complement now." Assuming that they still do.
Yeah.
So,
great point.
I think, and played them right down to the wire home. So, Saturday 4 p.m.
Bring the W, Kyle. Bring the W, Kyle.
Kyle, it's on you, man.
Hey, listen, my first year covering UCF football was 2017. I have that going for me.
Ooh.
There you go. Over on the women's side, they got a really tough week coming up with Saturday at K-State in the Octagon of Doom. And then following that up with going to Stillwater to face Oklahoma State on Wednesday. Right now, looking at the women's team, they've split their last 6. All right. So they finally, it looks like they're finally getting healthy here, Nick Porcelli.
Mm.
Finally getting that front court help back. But the hole that they've dug themselves is pretty deep right now. And then they got to go, like I said, K-State. The Wildcats are 21-4 on the season and 13-0 at home. In fact, they're the only team in the Big 12 that's undefeated at home this year, 10-3. Believe it or not, they're tied for second with Texas and West Virginia. Oklahoma right now 12-1 leads the league. But this is going to be a tough ask up there against K-State. So what's your outlook on this game for them, and what do they have to do to at least try and, stay competitive? Because you never know, right? Let's try and stay competitive and remain and keep building their confidence as they roll through this last few games in the schedule.
Well, to win in the Octagon of Doom, the greatest name ever. For one, don't do what the men did when they were up there. I'm not talking about that game.
All down
again.
Early.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get to the rip. Continue to be gritty. Like they said they want to be all year, be aggressive, do a better job to get to the rim, and just I don't know. In the games that I've watched this year, the ones that they lost really bad, it was always just they'd have horrible shooting in the first quarter. I think there was one game they had I want to say 5 points in one quarter. Just you can't do that, especially not on the road.
Yeah.
Well, and Porcelli, you mentioned it for the men with foul trouble. Listen, the women's side.
Oh, yeah. I can't believe I forgot that.
Trouble mania. And we mentioned gritty and aggressive. I don't know if Eric Lopez is going to, ask me to put on a tinfoil hat for this or not, but the refs, I think it's a matter of getting used to the different philosophy in officiating from one year to the next. I think that's a real issue here, because normally you could get away with, perhaps in a world with both Coach Abe going back a few years, right, and Coach Messer dealing in aggressive basketball, but that doesn't play quite as much here. And remember, the evidence for that is, you'll remember Eric Lopez when Coach Abe went to the NCAA tournament and was eliminated by Gino Auriemma. What did he complain about? Air quotes between the lines. They could not handle the physical style of play, and that wasn't proper basketball. Well, it's being officiated, I would argue, that way, allegedly, right, in the Big 12, and I think that's a big problem and has been for the women all year long.
I thought it was weird when Bryson fouled out of the BYU women's game there. I know he was kind of complaining about is that why he's at the Solar Bear? He says he's at the Solar Bears game. I didn't know the Solar Bears still even existed. I mean, is that real?
Ironically, sitting in the penalty box as we speak.
That's probably what women.
Yeah, I got a 5-minute major. It was unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, we've got, for the women's team, Caitlin Peterson, by the way, averaging 20 points per game. She leads the conference, leads the Big 12 in shot attempts as well as points right now. So she's, I know Caitlin Clark just set the D1 scoring record, but, shout out to Caitlin Peterson, who is having her own sort of mini Caitlin Clark season.
That's going to be interesting. I'm going to be interested to see if she makes all conference or not. That's going to be an interesting.
He should. First team, I don't know, but first team, but she should get something.
How many all conferences the Big 12 do? 2? Do they do 2?
I think they do 2. Yeah.
I was surprised to see her make either team. It's more a lack of familiarity by the people that are doing that placement. I'm not claiming a bias against UCF, anything beyond that they're new here. I'm not trying to wave that.
No. The coaches vote, and coaches tend to vote for players on winning teams. It's not as
egregious as last year when Poindexter made it over Destiny Thomas. That was unacceptable.
There you go.
You then text out of the conference tournament game that she got beat in anyway. So that justice was done. Someone's got a campaign for this, Eric Lopez. Let me work.
I'll say this, Eric. Which sport is it? You know this better than anybody. Which sport is it that they don't have an all freshman team. They have an all newcomer. I think softball, right?
No, that's news to me. I don't know.
All newcomer. Someone did. I forget who it was, but if there was an all, a Big 12 all newcomers team, she would definitely be on it. But because and by the way, I think actually given the transfer portal now, conferences should start considering that. Not just an all freshman team, but an all newcomer team. No?
Well, there's a whole can of worms with the transfer portal and what awards we could give out and prizes. Some would say they're already getting awards behind the scenes, but we'll see. We'll see what they do.
Right.
Yeah. Kyle knows.
Eric Lopez.
Thank you, Kyle.
Oh,
Thank
man.
You.
All right.
Thank you very much.
So the women's schedule once again at number 7 Kansas
Is
State.
Bryson going to be able to get out of the box
Saturday
to watch the women's game? Is he going to be able to get out of the box to watch? I mean, what's his status here, guys?
I hope so. It's going to get pretty cold there.
All I can tell you is the last 2 women's home game, I will be on site here at Edition Financial Arena. Bryson was good enough to step in Tuesday for my wedding anniversary, but listen, from this point on, the last 2 games at Edition Financial Arena, I'll be in the house.
So that's what we'll be keeping an eye on here. All right. I'm remiss if I don't talk with Eric Lopez and talk with and you, Kyle, as well about this. A little media news, shall we? ESPN and the college football playoff have agreed on a 6-year deal worth $1.3 billion per year. $1.3 billion per year.
May I cue the Dr. Evil Pinky for $1.3 billion? Okay, like
so ESPN gets to keep the rights to the 12-team playoff through 2031.
Wow.
This is wow. That's a whole freaking lot of money. Eric, what do we know about the details of this? How does it affect UCF? How does it affect the Big 12?
Well, the funny thing is it's not finalized until they actually figure out what they want to do with the playoff after the next 2 years. Lead it to college football to come to a TV deal before they can figure out what they want to do on the field. That's pretty much the sport.
Well, it's pretty clear. They're considering not staying at 12?
Correct. Yes. And then you're talking about maybe doing all. Go ahead, Kyle.
Yeah, considering the subdivision that's being talked about too by the president of the NCAA, breaking out the SEC and the Big Ten, is that really shocking? Like, what are we doing here? What?
It's. I mean, this is the SEC and the Big Ten is going to dictate this postseason playoff. Trust me on this. And the question will be: I think you're going to see more at-large teams in, less automatic bids, especially if you're not a major conference. In other words, Sun Belt. Enjoy the Birmingham and the whatever garbage New Mexico Bowl, sponsor bowl, fill in the blank bowl.
Blah, blah,
if you're not going to have a shot in hell and making a playoff, I got to tell you that right now.
Like you speak to this, the more at larges there are, the more the media can dictate who attends, right?
Bing, ding, ding, Kyle, you are correct. Look, I'm surprised Fox has not gotten a piece of this, considering the Big Ten obviously wanted Fox to get a piece of this. But it would not surprise me if ESPN Fox eventually works
anyone other than ESPN to get a piece.
Well, I think everybody, unless you're the SEC, wanted somebody else other than ESPN. The SEC is the big winner in this. This is going to be the SEC Invitational with the Big Ten. I mean, the Big Ten will also dominate this playoff. And Ross Dellinger wrote about this. I mean, it's interesting. Brett Yormark, you asked, what does this mean for the Big 12? I think the Big 12 will take its piece, 1 or 2 bids, and they're fine with it. And actually, Brett's pushing for 16 teams to try to increase the at-larges. So that way...
Which would be good for the Big 12.
Correct, but not for the G5. But nonetheless, it could be good for the Big 12. It's not guaranteed, but yes, it should, in theory, get you to 2 to 3 bids if you go to 16.
Yeah,
but do you know what the trade-off is? Here's the trade-off, though. The trade-off that Brett Yormark wants is we'll do whatever you say on the football side, but you're going to help me in basketball expand the tournament so I can get almost everybody from my conference in from basketball. So please kick the Missouri Valley out of my sight, please. That's Brett Yormark.
Here's the thing. I know you guys keep saying, the SEC and the Big Ten are going to have this thing totally wrapped up.
Yep.
But I was listening to Mark Daniels last week. And he brought up a good point with our good friend Mike Tuck. Where is it written in stone that the SEC and the Big Ten are in lockstep on all the details, financially and all that? Now, sure, they're the two conferences that make the most revenue.
Right.
Okay. But if there's one thing we both know, the underlying values that underpin both of those conferences are distinctly different. The Big Ten still has its kind of, I don't want to say stuffed shirt, but it's still kind of, they still at least pay lip service to the non-football related concept. Okay. The SEC just doesn't give a rip. We know that. But I don't see where it's a guarantee that those two are just always going to be in lockstep on this. I don't see it.
But they don't have to be on locksmith on everything, right?
There
Kyle?
you go.
But they do have to be in lockstep in this if they're gonna try and break out into their own thing.
Sure. I don't agree because there's a couple other things too, and you've heard it even suggested even by Chip Kelly before he ran over to hide in the Big Ten as a coordinator, as a Pac-12 coach. But we don't have to talk about that. I understand you see the humor in it, Eric Lopez, but that doesn't change my answer. The punchline's this: back before that even happened, Chip Kelly suggested that football as a sport be broken out from the NCAA. So keep in mind, this is a nugget that it could impact the ability to be in lockstep, right? Because if that does occur, Jeff, then you will have lockstep. I do believe then at that point, the Big Ten and the SEC will truly be indomitable because you make a point that, albeit, Billy Donovan was a thing at Florida where they both got a national championship in two sports, right? With men's basketball and football. That's however many years ago. I think it's 20 years ago, Eric Lopez?
7 and 08, 15 years ago.
Yeah. Okay, close enough. Punchline's this: if that separation happens, then we're in full Thanos mode. It is inevitable. To your point that you cite Daniels made, maybe they're not in lockstep, but the thing is, they're still the top two revenue getters. As is your point, there's still the two prettiest girls at the proverbial dance, right? And at day's end, that's all that's really necessary to have incentive to block out the other conferences.
Which is the bigger point there is maybe the Big Ten, SEC don't agree on a lot of things, but one thing they do agree is they're above the Big 12 and the ACC, and neither of them will be shy to take apart those conferences, as we've seen. All right. They both, you look at the Big Ten, let's not act like the Big Ten is not acted like the SEC because they helped kill the Pac-12. They took the Pac-12 teams. They didn't have to. They chose to do it because Fox wanted to do it. So this idea that the Big Ten is not like the SEC is laughable. They are a lot more like the SEC now than people realize.
In defense of the statement, though, no one gives a damn about SEC wrestling, but Big Ten wrestling is a big deal,
No one gives a crap about SEC basketball except Kentucky.
I mean, you're not wrong.
That's not true. That's not accurate.
Oh,
The SEC, check your TV listings on Tuesday nights. The SEC's on all the time. I think that's a little. The SEC arguably right now is the number 2 conference in basketball behind the Big 12. It's not. They're on pace for an 8-bid league. Now, you could say they care more about football. I agree with that. But Auburn sells out for basketball. Kyle makes the point. And Kyle's made this point now for about a year. The ACC, where is that league going to – how long has that league got left in a tank?
I've only made that point for a year on this podcast. On the Student of the Game, ding, I've been on that for a while.
But to Kyle's point, once Florida State leaves and then you got Clemson and all these – the Big Ten and the SEC are going to take them. They're going to take them. The biggest fight the Big Ten and the SEC will have is who gets North Carolina, for example. I think that's where, and I'm not saying this is going to happen tomorrow, but I do think this will happen within the next decade. That will be the next
point. I do think we are approaching diminishing returns, unless the Big Ten decides that they want to start kicking people out, which I don't know if they can legally without facing a gigantic lawsuit. At what point does adding North Carolina and Virginia increase the overall revenue pie? I don't think it
increases it. It's a market that they don't have, and you get a big basketball brand and a big state.
But in order for that to work with the networks, you can't just add another piece to the pie. They have to add more value to the entire conference than they just bring in by themselves.
Sure, and North Carolina will do that for the Big Ten or the SEC. Like, that's a big brand. You're going to bring money. This is headed
North
for
Carolina,
the NFL.
maybe, but Virginia?
I
Sure.
Clemson?
Yes.
Ooh,
Clemson draws big football. Football? You're telling me football?
Football.
What happens when Dabo quits?
There you go, Jeff. You nailed it.
There you go.
Clemson's on
What happens when Urban Meyer leaves Ohio State? There's still people still watch. That's the point. It doesn't.
That is not
people
the
are, so you're saying people are going to stop watching Clemson?
potentially.
We're going to stop watching. Florida State was terrible.
What I'm saying is they're not going to be as good as they used to be, and then people will stop watching.
The Big Ten added Rutgers, who's the most garbage.
But there was an old media reason behind that, Eric.
And there's still, if Fox says I want North Carolina, just like they wanted Oregon, they're going to take them, because at the end of the day, what they want is not a conference. They want a league. They want an They want the AFC. The Big Ten can be the AFC. The SEC can be the NFC. And then you have the ultimate championship game called the Super Bowl.
I'm still trying to figure out how Illinois and Purdue fit in all this. But anyway.
Well, how do the Jets fit in the NFL? How do the Jaguars fit in the NFL? There's always going to be bottom feeders you need in the sport. Sorry, Kyle.
By the way, shouts to the Jaguar Report as a publication. Bing! No, listen. But the question as it was posed is North Carolina versus Virginia. And that's where I think Jeff is right. North Carolina, to your point, with, listen, I can question Sam Howell and Drake May all day on being among the most overrated prospects in the past decade in both cases. I can make
preach.
It's still moving the needle on the football side, and we both know they are an immortal brand in basketball, so much so that UCF wants to look like them on the space game. Okay, so
fair. That's fair. That's a fair point. Great point. Okay? It's a fair point. No, I mean, you're right. North Carolina is a bigger brand than Virginia, but I'm telling you, people like the Virginia for whatever reason. I'm just telling you what people have been saying. They like the Virginia brand to be added. And I don't know if it's an academic thing. I don't know if it's a combination of many things, but they like Virginia because they don't have that market in their respective leagues or conferences, however you want to phrase it. So, listen, we're acting like all this stuff is supposed to make sense. It does not make any sense. So let's stop acting like this is supposed to make sense. The SEC and the Big Ten are going to bully this and do whatever they want, and nobody's going to stop him, period. Because there is nobody to stop him. So as far as the Big 12 is concerned, you're playing nice. And the trade-off is give me the tournament bids that I want in basketball, and I'll stay quiet, and I'll take my 1 to 2 bids, maybe 3 bids if we go to 16 teams in football, and I'll be happy. That's what the Big 12 is hoping for.
I don't know. I could see how Big 12 fans would not appreciate that.
Oh, I'm not saying they would be happy, but Brett Yormark is not in a position of leverage when it comes to this.
Not for those, not when that happens.
Correct, right.
I can make the argument that that's why the Big 10 and the SEC are doing it, is to take any leverage away from the Big 12.
Yes, 100%. 100%. You're absolutely right.
How the American took down the ACC, essentially. So,
well, I don't know, man. This is going to be fun.
College sports is done, Jeffrey. It's done as you know it, my friend. It's done.
Well, let me ask you this. How does this new app that ESPN, Turner / Warner Brothers, and Discovery Warner Brothers, which owns the Turner Networks, and Fox, how does this all play into that?
We'll see. I think everybody's trying to figure the NFL.
This kind of feels like it's going to be like the Hulu of sports. It's like I think it's a little bit of jazz hands.
I can see this. I would not be surprised if the opening round of the college football playoff games are on that type of stream.
Exclusively.
I can see that. Yes, because here's the thing. For all you and Kyle love, the college football playoff. Let's expand. Look at the TV dates they got. They don't have Saturdays anymore in January. Why? Why do they not have Saturdays available, Kyle?
I have no idea. I'm too busy driving to Jacksonville to answer that question.
Thank you. The National Football League runs Saturdays, and they're going to tell college football, you go play your little tournament in Thursdays, Friday nights, okay? And college football's, yes, sir. Yes, Mr. Goodell. Please, thank you, sir. I beg of you. Just, we love you. Please. That's what they're going to do. So I don't think this college football playoff is going to be as great as people think. I think a lot of it's going to be streamed. And you mentioned that TV money. That's actually not as much as people thought. There was not a lot of interest for the opening round games because nobody wants to get stuck with the mid-major game against the Power 5 in the opening round in football. This ain't March Madness. So I think that streaming platform could be your home for some of those college football playoffs you guys will be watching.
I feel like it's going to be more of like not so much a standalone app as much as a repository.
Well, it's going to be one where, hey.
Remember, Fox doesn't have a streaming infrastructure.
Sure.
Right? So they're basically piggybacking up off of that. And the interesting thing about this is, like you talked about basketball, Turner, and by association, Warner Discovery, are partners with CBS and Paramount on the NCAA tournament. CBS is not part of this.
Correct.
So where does that leave us?
I'll say this too, and here's the part we can't leave out. And I'm crediting Eric Lopez for making me think of this with the Big Ten's most recent TV deal. At the end of the day, you can make something streaming only, but unless somebody is paying a metric butt ton, you are losing viewership and therefore advertising reach. So to make it streaming only at this point is still a gamble. Is it one they'll make? I don't know. I can't speak to that. Lopez is well smarter than me on that.
Well, Kyle, the NFL has got dipped into it now with the Peacock playoff game with the Chiefs and the Dolphins. Amazon has reportedly purchased a playoff game, so people are starting to tap their waters. And I
did see what happened with Peacock. All I'm hearing from NFL fans is that the fan experience was terrible. And
I agree.
You see that playoff. Listen, you'll even speak to the playoffs and the Super Bowl. Sorry, the conference championship and the Super Bowl making record-breaking numbers. What was it? 56 mil for the conference championship and 120 26 for the Super Bowl? You ain't going to get that in the damn stream, and no one's going to put numbers like that at risk.
Well, and you make a great
here's
point
the other thing. Sorry, Eric. I just want to make this one point off of what Kyle was saying. That Chiefs-Dolphins playoff game that you were talking about on Peacock, it's one thing if NBC threw, I forget how much money they threw at the NFL to buy that.
It can't have been cheap.
It can't have been
110 million.
110 million. Did they get $110 million worth of A, advertisement, and B, new subscriptions off of that? I am dubious of that.
You're making and let me alter your question to where I think it's more air quotes semantically correct, right? It's not a matter of did they make enough to cover the cost? Did they make enough to gain as much as they would have if they had stayed on conventional
because the guys who are up at the top here, they have an idea of a premium, like whatever percent above that they think they can make.
ROI.
100. Yeah. Thank you. You can tell I never got a business degree, but and then what was it, Eric, that Amazon was paying for it?
Yeah, next year they're going to have a playoff game.
What are they paying for it?
Similar number.
Let's say about $115 million.
Yeah, so reportedly.
I mean, I'm doing the math here. I don't know how much I don't know how much per 30 seconds you got to spend. On advertisement, but man, I don't know, bro.
The reason why Amazon is scarier to me is because they don't make their money in broadcasting. They could take some lost leaders and invest and get audience and do all that. And y'all know that Bezos is crazy enough to do that ish, right?
Well, he's trying to get a piece of the NBA package to put it on Thursday nights, take it away from Warner Brothers, which I think he's going to be successful.
What he's also trying to do is set up an advertisement infrastructure where I can buy something on my Amazon wish list during a commercial break with one click of a button. That's what he wants. But NBC's calculation is different. They're not an online store.
There you go.
So that's where I just kind of, I don't know, man. I think Amazon is the only platform that can realistically pull it off and have an ironclad business case behind it.
Them or Google?
Yeah, them or Google, but but Google is itself an advertising platform. How much stuff do we buy from Google? Not a lot.
And that's the thing. You got to get into subsidiaries and things like that. Amazon is the much better infrastructure, Now, granted, with Google, they can get in and manipulate, air quotes, I'll say integrate the search engine aspect and all of that to do the same sort of thing, and I'm speaking broadly.
I know this is getting technical, but I think you're right. Okay.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
but
I know
it's still not as much as moving product.
There's an argument to be made without having the numbers in front of me of what moves more product, he says, as a data professional by day, right? So
here's another thing about the
only one who would have sorry, Eric, I want to get to you and just say, I was going to say the only other company that I thought would probably have a chance of doing that is Apple, because you're going to move iPhones and watches and stuff. So well, go ahead, Eric. What were you saying?
Apple's ingrained in a lot else too. Go ahead, Eric. I'm sorry.
Well, Apple's done the MLS deal and they got the MLB Friday night pack or whatever that's worth.
Yeah. They're kind of tiptoeing into that.
Here's the other thing I don't know all the specifics of the ESPN playoff. You make an interesting point, Kyle. There are a lot of college football people that don't like this deal because they feel that the national championship game and maybe even the semis should not be on cable, that it should be on broadcast television like the National Football League has kept, for the most part, the playoffs.
And they make a convincing case about that too.
Because
I agree with it. Yeah.
Right. And I think that's to your point about the exposure. I mean, that's, I'm curious to see if ESPN decides to simulcast it like they did with Monday Night Football this year. You notice how Monday Night Football that benefited from that. Right. I would like to see college football do that. Will they? I don't know. But that is something to watch. But I do think while you guys make points about streaming, that's not going to stop college. I mean, like Caitlin Clark, for all the glory about Caitlin Clark, she broke the women's record tonight on Peacock.
Yeah, I'll say this for me, and it's different with the women's basketball game. It's growing, but it's not football big yet, obviously. I think at this time in the football space, you have to use streaming as icing, not cake. That may change. We're slowly moving towards it, but for now, that's the case for football and major sports.
I think, I think you're going to see more exclusive games online, though. You saw this with Peacock in the Big Ten, where Ohio State game aired on Peacock exclusive. I think ESPN eventually will air certain games on ESPN.
But again, there's a difference between like a regular, Ohio State versus Indiana and a playoff championship game. And here's the other case that they made.
Well, I predict. I think there will be a playoff game that will, if not more playoff games, will be on streaming. That will happen.
I think that one of the cases against that would be you could have a case and get the FCC involved and say, why are these public land grant universities that receive all this public money air their football games?
The ship has sailed on that a long time ago.
It hasn't, because that was part of the Sports Broadcasting Act. That was part of
telling you right now, Florida State versus Liberty in the opening round of the college football playoff would be streamed and nobody would say a word because nobody would care about that game. That's the thing. Now
nobody would care about Liberty because it's a private university, but if it was Florida State against Georgia,
we're getting games that nobody's going to know. The ship has sailed. We have boxing events for $50. We're going to put everything now is on stream. It's not like
boxing isn't funded by public tax dollars.
Again, but again, people have the stream. People that want to watch it are going to watch it. That's the thing. I think the sports landscape has changed where, to Kyle's point, he hates baseball. The beauty of this world is he doesn't have to watch baseball. He can watch football year-round if he wants. He can watch basketball, whatever. That's the beauty of it now. You're not being forced to it. If you don't like the fact that the game is being streamed, then don't watch it. Don't pay for it. I mean, I know plenty of friends of mine that didn't pay for the Chiefs game because they were mad it was on Peacock.
I did not watch your Dolphins get crushed in the cold because I knew
you didn't miss. Absolutely, you shouldn't.
I just think it flies in the face of the idea that if college sports, in particular college football, are the front door to the university in terms of getting students in the door, and you're throwing it on.
Yeah, right. Oh, that's great. Really, we're going to believe that still today.
Well, guess what? Yeah. None of this stuff happens if you don't get students in paying tuition, right?
It is still a market tool, to Jeff's point, Eric.
Right.
But I think where I agree with your chuckles there is at the day's end, it's becoming an enterprise, not
Thank
just
you, Kyle.
a
It's a
state.
business. Let's
Yeah.
stop acting like it's this, mom and pop amateurism nonsense. All right, it's a business now. That's
No,
what they
I'm saying
wanted.
it is a business, but the core business is the university.
Yeah, and
University don't work
what?
unless you get kids paying tuition, man.
And they're not going to stop paying tuition because the game's being streamed. If anything, they'll be more excited because that's all they watch now.
Okay.
They don't watch.
Or maybe an agreement is if you live in the dorm, you get the streaming of that local university's games for free.
No, I think if you live in the dorm, they've got a Porsche that they're riding, those football players.
By the way, for those who may not have seen, Nick was very pro that concept.
Yes, he was.
Anyway.
See, Kyle smile. See, Nick's like
$1.3 billion. We'll have more details on this as it comes out. All right, time to go to Kyle's favorite portion of the show, the softball baseball portion here.
Why that, Jeff?
We're going to start with. I'm actually going to start with softball because softball's actually got some games in the can right now. Elo, you wrote it up, on blackandgoldbanneret.com.
Hey, he's got
I know. I got the bell. I've always had the bell. Now I have it queued up. 5-1 start to the season. The only loss was a split to UConn. 3-2 was that only loss at home. But 10-2 over Howard, 9-1 over UConn, 5-0 over Seattle, 7-2 over Georgia State, 7-5 over Liberty, and now they head out to the Clearwater Invitational. You will be headed out there as well. They got North Carolina, I should say, Wisconsin, Kentucky, number 14 Kentucky, number 22 Northwestern, and number 19 UCLA on the docket here. So 5 big games against 5 other power conference teams. It's nice to say that, by the way, right? 5 other power conference teams. Your read on that first week, that 6-game run, did they do what they expected to do? And what did we learn heading into this first big tournament?
I think they're still a work in progress. Nick and I were out there. Nick, I mean, I think the pitching's still a work in progress after Sarah Willis, right? I think they're still trying to identify themselves. Caitlin Feld's gotten a couple games started. Who's going to be the closer? Who's relieving? You know what you got in Sarah Willis. Where does everybody else's role after that, Nick? Would you agree with that based on you've been there? That's the sense that I got so far.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. I mean, every pitcher that they've used has definitely shown bright spots, but even they'll tell you, they're not where they want to be yet. So, there's still some things to figure out, which, to be fair, is exactly where they were last year. Although I would argue they're a little bit better last year because I think there's a little less questions with pitching. Would you agree with that? Or
no, they got more depth this year than last year. There was a lot of questions. We didn't know what Sarah Willis was.
Yeah, that's what I mean. There's less questions now because we have a little.
So there's lesser questions. You're right. There are lesser questions, but the competition's a little higher now with you get into Big 12 versus the American. So I think they're still fine-tuning some stuff. I think their pitching is going to be put to the test. I was watching games today in Clearwater. The ball flies out of there. So they're going to get challenged. North Carolina, Wisconsin can hit the ball. Wisconsin should have beaten Georgia today. They didn't. They can hit. North Carolina really hit against Kentucky. Kentucky's been off to a great start. So this is a challenging tournament. And then they go to Nutter out west. The competition's just as strong. So they're going to learn a lot in the next 2 weeks. And it's going to be stressful from that standpoint, although Mother Nature may interrupt some of this or supposedly weather.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's going to be a pretty nasty weekend over on this side of the state. Are they expecting the same in Clearwater?
Kyle, be careful, Kyle. I'm worried about you, buddy. Be careful when you head out there.
I'll do my best.
Thank you, sir. I worried about you. Anyway, so we'll see. We'll see what happens with the pitching there, Nick. What do you want to see else, Nick? Because offensively, they put up good numbers.
Yeah.
But it was kind of in bunches. It wasn't consistent, right? Like the Liberty game, they scored, I think, 4 in the first, didn't score again until the 5th. They're going to have to be a lot more consistent here in the next couple of weeks. But again, it's a work in progress. We're 6 games into the season. Yeah.
It's their first real test. That's just really, I'm interested to see when they have to face ranked opponents, really good teams. I mean, no disrespect to the teams that they played, but Clearwater's a different level. So I'm just interested to see how they come up to the challenge. And that makes me want to ask you, Eric, to you, what is a successful tournament for these guys? What does that look like?
Yeah, that was going to be my question. Out of these 5 games, are you what are you happy with if they get out of that they get out of there?
3-2, I'd be thrilled. Give me above 500. I will be thrilled. I'll hug Nick. I'll hug and kiss Kyle the next time I see him.
Right.
Great. We'll put over our differences over how Kyle Shanahan handled the Super Bowl as long as the softball team has a winning record. I will put it aside.
Why did I guess that softball was what's going to make Eric positive?
Nick, do you not remember that hug after the conference championship last year in Tampa? Wasn't that? I mean, I was about to go to the hospital when they got knocked out by Memphis, and then they came back. But
I remember.
Not easy. I do remember. But again, 3-2, I'd be thrilled. 2-3 wouldn't be bad, but then we'll see. They go to Nutter too, so it's fascinating. I'm really intrigued. That's why I'm looking forward to going out there tomorrow. Brenna's going to be out there with me. We're going to have coverage there to play.
Shout out to Brenna Johnson, who's going to be taking photos and video out there for us.
Carolina, Wisconsin. I'm really curious to see how the pitching staff handles that, and the offense got to be a lot more timely. I think they're still figuring out the lineup. The potential is there. I think I'm really intrigued to see how they come out this weekend, and we're going to learn a lot. I think what we're headed for softball wise, because this is a prelude of what you're going to get on a weekly basis once you enter the Big 12.
Yeah. All right. Well, you'll be on social for that, I imagine, Eric, doing a lot of work there for D1.
I will be doing on social. I'll be there in person. I'll be trying to say hello to Mark Neely, who I spoke to on In the Circle. Let's play this clip. Can we play the clip? I interviewed Mark Neely, ESPN Zone. He's calling softball with Amanda Scarborough over there, but he calls basketball. He was calling the UCF Kansas game. So I had to ask Mark Neely about UCF softball, but I also asked him about him calling the UCF upset over Kansas and that Shoegate. Get his side of that story.
All right, here's Mark Neely from ESPN.
City Ball Malone, they're entering their first year as Big 12 members. Now, you and I talked off the air about, you calling a UCF basketball game recently against Kansas that went viral, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But what's your thoughts on UCF as they enter the first year in the Big 12? Because you've covered the Big 12 for many years in various sports. Your thoughts on the Knights here as you'll see them in Clearwater?
Eric, the first time UCF really got on my radar, and obviously I pay attention to all the teams in the major conferences, but when Cindy Ball Malone, when Bears team beat Michigan a few years ago, I had the Orlando Regional, had to go to OU. What happens at OU happens, but what a season. So, but they've still made the last 3 NCAA tournaments in a row. They have Sarah Willis back, unanimous Conference Pitcher of the Year in the American last year. I think they were picked 5th.
Yeah.
It was OU, Texas, Oklahoma State, I think Baylor, and then UCF. Well, I'll correlate this to basketball. With the men's Big 12, which I do a lot of, quite frankly, when the preseason poll came out, I don't think most of the coaches knew hardly anything about UCF or Cincinnati or BYU. They knew about Houston, but the other 3 were completely undervalued compared to where they are and how good they have been in the conference. And I think UCF will be the same way. I mean, when you're in one of 3 places, California, Texas, or Florida, your recruiting base is going to be close by. So I think UCF is going to be, especially when Texas and OU go vamoose to the SEC next year. Yeah, Arizona's coming in. There's going to be some changes as well, but I don't see why UCF can't be one of the big players in the Big 12.
Yeah, and you got to witness the basketball side a few weeks back when UCF hosted Kansas in the up there at the Additional Financial Arena, sold-out crowd, where they upset Kansas. You were working with Michael Dono, who's a friend of mine, and all craziness broke loose when UCF won the game. There's a court storming, and somebody threw a shoe, right? And near the crew. Tell us I haven't heard your side of the story. I've heard Michael Dono's side of the story, but I've not heard your side of the story in this.
Eric, there really isn't much to my side of the story. I just, when the game ended, fortunately, there was a security officer, not that they were coming for us, but the way the students were coming around the table, they were kind of knocking off the monitor and kicking around some stuff. We were hoping we didn't lose power or something crazy like that. But fortunately, one of the security people got out in front and started motioning them away. And I was kind of watching him. And the next thing I know, Mike picks up a shoe. Mike's to my right, and he goes, somebody lost a shoe. And he picks up the shoe, and he's showing it around. and he set the shoe down. We kind of continued with this big story that was going on there. And I don't know what happened to the shoe after that, quite frankly. I don't know if the shoe owner came back and eventually picked it up. I think so. But yeah, that was a crazy game. It was a crazy night. I remember talking with Mike before the game, and he said, "Man, I just hope we keep it close." And I'm like, I think this is going to be. Looking at the Big 12 this year, there's no great team. I mean, this is not out of the question. I didn't know Kansas was going to lose, but I definitely knew UCF had a decent shot with a score like Jalen Sellers and the length of Diallo. But that was a crazy night. That it was fun to see, just seeing a school brand new in the conference, because I had UCF the week before at Kansas State in their conference opener, and they got absolutely hammered by K-State. Never led at any point in the game, and looked a little wide-eyed, like, "Ooh, this is the Big 12 road game." Home's different. Winning in the Big 12 is a lot different story on the road, and it was a much different story that night in Orlando.
Yeah, they've been very played well in the toughest conference in college basketball. That's, depending on where you look at projection-wise, could be a 9 to 10 bid league, depending on how things shake out. And from a softball standpoint, you got Oklahoma and Texas, you mentioned, for the last year, but Oklahoma State, Baylor is a lot of high expectations for them, and I think UCF feels they could fit there. You mentioned the changes next year. How much does realignment change or maybe make it a little more challenging? Is that something that you kind of make a note of, that, hey, this could be next year, they're going to be in a completely different conference? I mean, it's unique because you're so used to seeing a certain teams in a league for so many years, and now there's going to be changes, like a UCF, for example. It's like you got to remind yourself, oh wait, they're in this conference now.
It is a lot to take in, Eric. There's so many changes going on. I'll say this, and it's going to be gone. It's going to be weird. I did hear Coach Kelly Inouye Perez from UCLA. Someone asked her, the UCLA Arizona series is always looked forward to because of the history of the schools. Can that eventually come back, or at least continue? And she was optimistic about it, and I hope that's the case, that those two schools get a chance to play each other. But I'm really heartbroken that the Pac-12 is going away. I mean, we finally got a conference tournament, the Pac-12, and we're all in Tucson last year saying how great this is, and now whoever goes to the second and turns out final Pac-12 tournament this year, it's going to be a little heartbreaking.
All right, I'll let you pull it back here, Eric. Go.
All right, that was Mark Neely. That was from my interview on In the Circle podcast. There's a full interview there. We talk a lot of softball, a lot about his career and all that.
In the Circle.
Right. Thank you, podcast there. Thank you very much. Mark Neely's good. Called that Kansas UCF game. Kyle, how would you have handled it if somebody threw a shoe at you? How would you have handled it?
I'd like to think I was deaf to nothing, my agility to catch it in midair. But, that's just me. That's me trying.
That was good.
It
was good to hear Mark very complimentary about UCF and being contender in a lot of the sports in the Big 12. Because as somebody who covers the Big 12 a lot in various sports. So
speaking of competitive in the Big 12, lest we forget, and we're going to wrap up on this, baseball is getting started this weekend. 3-game set for the Knights. Rich Wallace making his debut as UCF's head coach. Obviously, Rich, as many of us who remember, played and then coached under Jay Bergman back in the day. According to UCF projected starters, Ben Vespi gets the ball on Friday. By the way, it's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 6 p.m., 6 p.m., 1 p.m. Tyler Nesbitt is slated to go Saturday. Dom Stagliano is slated to go on Sunday. UCF is facing the Bryant Bulldogs out of the American East. By the way, who's the head coach of the Bryant Bulldogs? Anyone care to? This is a blast from the past.
Ryan Klosterman. Yeah,
Ryan Klosterman. That's right. The longtime hitting coach and recruiting coordinator for UCF in his 5th season already at Bryant. It'll be on Big 12 now. This will be the first meeting ever between UCF and Bryant. All right, Elo, I'll start with you, and then I want to see if I can dive over to Nick on this too. First game of the first 3 games of the year. Obviously, this is we remember back in the day quite well the Monmouth series. Back in the day it used to be was it Siena, right?
Yeah.
This is a little bit better team, I think, overall than those two. But obviously, you want to stay healthy. But what does Rich have to figure out here in this first weekend, Eric?
Figure out who they are. Who is this team? I know. And Nick, you were at media day with Bryson before Bryson hit the penalty box. It's this team is kind of mysterious, isn't it? Like, it's been quiet.
Yeah, I mean,
Like,
I got to be honest. Out of all the teams this year, this being their first year in the conference, they're the ones I have the least expectation for, and I don't mean that in the sense that I think they're going to do terrible. I just mean like I have no idea what I can expect from them. I really don't.
And I think that's the consensus. They've got some nice pieces coming back offensively.
I think that's exactly how Rich wants it too, by the way.
Maybe, but you got to pitch, as we learned last year. Got to pitch a little bit.
Yeah.
Ben Vespe's going to get the ball opening day. We'll see which Ben Vespe we get. He's had some injury issues. By the way, that monitor the schedule with the weather. That schedule could change a little bit.
That's also true.
So it's kind of it's a transitional year. And I think they're selling good club seats. That's good. I think the competition, and obviously you got the alum. They have a big donor from an alum today. There was about 100. So I think Rich will get the support. Yes. But I think baseball, I think there's a lot. I don't know, Nick, if you tell me if I'm wrong in this, there's a lack of, I don't know if it's trust or something that's missing with the fan base in baseball right now. And I think it's because, the baseball team hasn't been bad the last 7, 8 years. It's not like this team was rock bottom and they got rid of the coach because they were terrible. They were good, but they weren't good enough. And we had some good results early, and then they didn't do as well in conference. And I feel like there's a kind of a wait and see mode with baseball, right? Is that fair? I think it's a wait and see.
I don't know what it is, but I'd agree with you. There's something missing that, like, I don't know. Maybe it's just that they haven't given the fans, like, I'm speaking as a student who talks with other students on campus. They haven't really given us something to talk about. Like, even like last year in the lower moments, every sport seemed to give us something. Like, even like basketball, they went to the NIT, beat Florida. They had that huge win against Memphis. That gave us something to talk about. You have this year with soccer. At one point, they're ranked number 1. Volleyball was coming in off of like how many straight conference championships. Every team gave us something, and baseball hasn't really done anything noteworthy in a while.
I haven't made the tournament since 2017.
Yeah. I mean, they did have.
That wasn't for a lack of close calls, though.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's what. I don't know. I guess like last year, I think their biggest claim to fame was having JRP, and they don't have that this year.
Kyle even got to see a couple innings of John Rice playing baseball. I mean, that was a big deal when Kyle popped in for a couple innings. That's a miracle. No, that's a fair point. John Rice was more of the story from that standpoint. I think there's a lot of factors into that. Let's be real. I think softball has stolen their thunder. Softball's outperformed them.
I mean,
Eric. Woo.
Am I wrong?
I don't think so.
People, go on Twitter. More UCF fans talk about them than they do baseball.
Now that could change. That could change in a dime. See what I did there, dime. Diamond. Thank you, Kyle. See, Kyle, come on. Kyle, I support your material. Come on.
That's
Kyle.
a bit of a reach.
I was supportive. I didn't think it was great, but I was supportive.
That's Eric. I've known you for more than 20 years. I would have to say that's not your best material. I've heard much better.
But like I said, we'll see with baseball. I mean, obviously, it's got the great tradition, but it's a program. It's only made 3 NCAA since 2005. I think it's a wait and see. I think people are intrigued because you got the alum factor in Rich, but I think it's a transitional year. I think we're kind of going to learn on the fly how does Rich as a head coach? What's his staff do? Is this an offensive team? Is this a pitching team? I know Rich has talked about putting the ball in play more, not depend on the home run like last year. But again, do you get quality innings out of your starters? Because they didn't get that last year, and that's what probably derailed their season. We can talk all we want about all the other stuff, but it was their pitching that let them down. We'll see. This may not be the year they fix that, but we'll see. We'll see. I'm be curious to see how they come out the first few weeks. But I'm curious to see what the interest level will be beyond opening night. We'll see. Will people be invested in this team when they play Sanford, for example, or in South Florida? Do they get off to a good start to keep you invested? Kind of like basketball. When basketball beat Kansas, now you're hooked for the rest of the basketball season. Mm-hmm. I think baseball kind of needs that jump start. But if they could do that in conference, maybe that'll do it. But I think it's a wait and see. Wait and see would be the theme for this year. Wait and see transition.
Yeah. 6 p.m. scheduled start Friday, scheduled 6 p.m. Saturday. We'll see how that goes with the weather. 1 p.m. on Sunday. I didn't check when the weather's supposed to come in, Elo. Did you see where?
Listen, you know me and weather people. We don't get along.
No. I'm not asking weather people. I'm asking you. Put your money where your mouth is.
No, they've changed their mind as usual. Some have said it's going to be a Sunday event. Now some are saying it could dig into Saturday night. I mean, it depends. Is this going more north? Is it going more south? I don't know. We have all these computers, but we don't know. All I'm worried about is that Kyle's suit doesn't get wet, because that's a travesty if that happens.
That would be problematic.
Thank you.
Jeez Louise, it's just like all the other things. You think a guy?
Have you seen Kyle's suit? I don't want Kyle's suit to get wet. I mean, the guy had to go through the Cure Bowl, for Christ's sake, in that monsoon.
Okay, Kyle has been around long enough to know, in that case, don't wear a suit.
No, he's a brave guy. He's one of those that he wants to wear a suit and challenge the elements. He's a daredevil.
Okay, but we also live in Florida, so you know what we're getting, right? Kyle, I just want to let you know, as the managing editor of Black and Gold Banneret, it's okay for you not to wear a suit if the weather does not permit.
Well, first of all, in the name of preventing false advertising, it's shirt and tie, not a suit. Second, at this point, if I don't wear a shirt and tie, I'm letting down more of my public that come to read us on the blackandgoldbanneret.com.
I don't think you'd be recognizable. When's the last time you didn't wear a tie covering a sporting event?
Well, covering a UCF sporting event, it hasn't happened. I do wear different attire for other events because I have to, properly represent by the request of the company in question.
Fair.
I appreciate, which, by the way, I always appreciate, but let's, a little self-awareness goes a long way. I'm just saying. Exactly.
And I am self-aware of my reputation. If my shirt and tie are rained on, I get respect. Holla at your boy.
I mean, I think I don't know if I don't know if it's respect as much as it's.
You just want. You
a little bit, sure, a little. I mean, sympathy probably.
Can't you both, Jeff? Why are we?
Kyle, wow, man, showing up despite the elements. Can you believe he still dresses like that when he knew it was going to be a bloody tropical rainstorm in the middle?
I'll make a note of how you feel about our good friend Justin's attire as the SID.
Listen, listen, I will say Justin Wilson is unimpeachable in his style. I don't know how the man pulls it off, but it's just one of those things where it's like it's kind of like it's like Jordan, right? It's like, you know what? There's everybody else, and then there's him, and you know what? We can't touch him. So let's just acknowledge that right off the bat.
And listen, I'm all right being the underappreciated Horace Grant that still beat Jordan in that playoff series. It's okay.
Okay. With that, we're going to put this thing to bed. We all
good
got
luck, Nick, weekend. On your race. Good luck good luck in your race this weekend, Nick.
Appreciate it. Yeah, thank you.
That's right, Nick. You're running this week?
I'll be down in my hometown of Tampa, so that's gonna be fun. Taking on at the University of Tampa, taking on a mix of D2 schools like said University of Tampa, Nova Southeastern, and a few small D1
Now,
schools.
This is the club men's track and field team. Is that right?
Yeah, that's who I'm going with, but I'm going up against like actual NCAA teams, like including some D1. Like I think Stetson and Florida Gulf Coast are going to be down there. So, yeah.
What events you got on tap?
I'm currently signed up for the 5K, 3K, and the mile. I don't think I'm going to be doing all three of those because that's a little much.
You want Kyle to fill in on one of them?
Ooh. I was about to say I don't drive my car that far. Like
I tried that one time
what's your best? What's your best mile? I gotta
know. Straight mile. I think I ran it like at even 5 minutes, but
dang.
I don't know. I feel like I might have broke it like in a longer. I feel like I always do this. I'll break like my PR in like a longer race. Like I broke my 5K PR, and I think in a 5 miler. So.
Wow, I don't know. This guy talking.
Hey, you know, it's just you know what? I'll just say this: it's just a warm up because in March I'll be competing at the Knights Invite here. So
okay. Now when is the race? Saturday night?
This weekend's race?
Yes.
Or Saturday night, 5 to 10 p.m.
What happens if it rains?
As long as there's no lightning, you just Gun's still going
We
off.
play on.
Wow.
You just keep wearing the shirt and tie. That's right.
Nick, if you show up to this race that you're running it wearing a shirt and tie, we're gonna have a talk. Okay, I'm just saying.
I don't think you will.
I'm just putting it out there for you. Okay, Kyle, where are we gonna catch you this weekend?
Well, this weekend you'll see me at Edition Financial Arena, sitting in for Nick Porcelli, covering UCF.
That's sir.
Okay, Elo, I know you're gonna be down in Clearwater, right?
Yeah, in this Clearwater, Eric Lopez Hilo watched UCF game, a bunch of other softball. Brent will be taking photos. We got team coverage there. If Nick doesn't pass out from his racing, he could probably join us at some point too. But we will be there in Clearwater all week tomorrow and beyond. So we'll see. And then I'll be following Kyle on Saturdays. Make sure he picks a win on the basketball court.
I got a double dip this weekend. I'm going to be I'm filling in for Jake doing the Valkyries tomorrow night.
Hey, all right.
So first Orlando Valkyries game doing PA tomorrow, and then Saturday men's basketball, of course, Cincinnati. Looking forward to seeing everybody there, well, except for you guys who aren't going to be there. But I'm looking forward to seeing Kyle there, and hopefully the students as well. Hopefully we can get a dub. I think that would be a big that'd be a real gut check. I think for us, we can get the win over Cincinnati. Yeah, I mean, who knows? We got a lot going on. We're kind of in like you talk about wait and see for baseball, Eric. We're in a lot of wait and see everywhere in sports. So at UCF Sports. So I think it's going to be this will be an interesting week. All right, make sure you follow us on social media. We are at blackandgoldbanneret.com, the home of UCF Sports on SB Nation. You can also follow us on Facebook, X/Twitter, Instagram, and Threads. And also you can follow us individually. I'm at Jeff Sharon on Threads. Nick is on X for still at Nick Porcelli 2. Eric's at Eric Lopez Elo all over the place. Kyle Nash is at the SOTG on X. And I think the student of the game as well on Threads. Is that right?
I am the SOTG not only on Twitter, Jeff, but also on Threads and on Spill and Instagram as well. So check that out.
Spill and
on what?
Never heard of Spill. What's that one?
Spiller.
I'll put it this way. We'll talk offline about that because to respond might be politically incorrect.
Oh, okay. Okay. Very well. All right. Well, for all of us at the Night Shift podcast and Black and Gold Banneret, for Eric, Kyle, Nick, I'm Jeff. Enjoy the weekend. I'll see y'all on Saturday for UCF basketball. Go Knights, charge on. We'll see you.